I'm not coming back. I've met someone better, and your things are already in storage. That was the entire message. 2 sentences, sent at 11:42 p.m. on a Thursday. Attached was a screenshot of $118,000 0 cents transferred from our joint savings into a new account under her name. I stared at the screen, not blinking, not shocked. My name is Simon Calder. I'm 54 years old, and I was standing in the kitchen of our Des Moines condo, holding a mug of cold coffee, staring at the moment my 15-year marriage ended, with a push notification. Natalie, my wife, was supposed to be on day 4 of a wellness retreat in Palm Springs. She had said there wouldn't be Wi-Fi. I guess there was enough signal to end a life. I set the mug down carefully on the counter, not because I was shaking, but because that's what you do when things fall apart quietly. For the past year, I'd noticed the shift. Weekend getaways stretching longer, clothes she never wore around me, messages that stopped when I entered the room. I'm a forensic accountant. Noticing patterns is literally what I do. But I had said nothing. Maybe I didn't want confirmation, or maybe I was giving her one last chance to choose honesty. Instead, she chose a clean exit and an open attack. I opened my laptop. Not the one she knew about, the other one. The one with the contingency layers. The one tied to systems Natalie never asked about because she never cared how I earned the money she spent. I logged into a secure portal, one I'd built years ago with my brother Owen, a digital security consultant. 3 alerts blinked at me: account access attempts, password reset requests, devices not previously recognized. She was being thorough. I had to respect that. I picked up my phone and typed 2 words in reply: good luck. Then I called Owen. He answered on the second ring. Hey. It's time, I said. Are you sure? She made her move. A pause. Understood. I hung up and looked around the kitchen. Stillness. The air was stale, like the condo had known before I did. My eyes landed on a photo on the wall. Natalie and I on our wedding day. It was the only picture in the house that still had both of us in it. Funny, I hadn't noticed that until just now. We met at an alumni fundraiser for the University of Iowa. I was 38, already divorced once, consumed with building a solo forensic firm. She was 34, magnetic, lean, glowing with ambition, and uninterested in anything involving spreadsheets. I don't need the details, she used to say, as long as you make enough for us to live well. I took that as charm, not a red flag. We married after a year. I helped her open her yoga studio. Bankrolled the build-out, marketing, everything. When she wanted a luxury SUV, I signed the papers. When she said we needed to move to a better school district, though we had no kids, I signed again. My father once said while we were fixing his deck, "Son, I notice she spends a lot of your money. Just make sure she values what you do to earn it." I shrugged it off back then, but it stayed. 6 years into the marriage, I began quietly building walls. Not to trap her, just to survive her if I had to. I created 2 LLCs, moved some assets into long-term instruments, bought crypto under offshore custodies I used for international clients. All legal, all clean, just invisible. To her. Our joint accounts looked healthy. The real assets were somewhere else. I didn't expect her to go nuclear, but I wasn't going to be caught with nothing but a frozen bank screen and a broken heart. The last thing I did before bed that night was check one more thing. Her Instagram. She'd posted a photo that afternoon. Palm trees, a cocktail, and a man's arm around her waist. The caption read, "New chapter, new clarity." I smiled for the first time in hours, not from pettiness, but because clarity was something I had too. And unlike hers, mine came with a 5-year audit trail. Natalie always thought my job was boring. Spreadsheets and taxes, she used to say with a wave of her hand, like I was an overpaid bookkeeper who just happened to wear tailored shirts. But she never understood the difference between a regular accountant and a forensic one. A regular accountant files numbers. A forensic accountant notices what's missing. And what Natalie missed, what she never thought I'd notice, was how carefully she'd been laying her exit. But I'd noticed everything. Every delay in eye contact. Every small charge to accounts we didn't usually use. Every time her phone tilted away from me at just the right angle. I noticed. I just hadn't acted. Until now. That Friday morning, I woke before sunrise. Same routine, brewed the coffee, logged into the console, not for work, for containment. My financial system had been designed to track anomalies, alert for unauthorized access, and freeze activity with a single command. It wasn't flashy, but it worked. First, I froze all joint bank accounts. Then I locked all shared credit cards, issued alerts for suspected fraud to our banks. Within minutes, the $118,000 0 cents transfer Natalie had made was flagged and escalated to the compliance desk of a bank where I'd trained half their fraud team. By 6:20 a.m., her transaction was under investigation. She wouldn't know it yet, but the countdown had begun. Next, I generated the trigger packet. It contained all documentation proving financial misconduct, evidence of undisclosed co-signed loans, and asset movement inconsistent with marital agreements. I sent it to my divorce attorney with one instruction: execute Phase 1. Her reply came 2 minutes later. Understood, filing this morning. I closed the tab, opened another, one that tracked device access to any account tied to my SSN. Natalie had tried 6 more times in the past 12 hours. She was hunting, but she was only seeing the surface. And beneath it, everything was locked behind walls she never knew existed. At 7:02 a.m., I called my mother. Natalie left me, I said. She took the money. She moved my things to storage while I slept. There was a long pause on the other end. Then, I'm sorry, Simon, but I can't say I'm surprised. Neither could I. What are you going to do? She asked. What I've been preparing to do for years. I ate breakfast in silence. The kind of silence that doesn't feel empty, just clean. At 8:13 a.m., my phone buzzed. Natalie, I let it ring. Then again, and again, 5 calls, then a text. What the hell did you do? The money's gone. My cards don't work. Answer me. I didn't reply. I opened a secure folder titled Anchor Protocol, red line. Inside were PDFs of every asset Natalie had never known existed. 2 LLCs registered in New Hampshire, a silent partnership stake in a logistics company based in Luxembourg, a frozen crypto wallet I'd loaded gradually over 4 years. All clean, all declared, all separated, all mine. Natalie thought she'd taken everything. She didn't realize she'd barely touched 10%. She thought she was playing checkers. I'd been playing audit chess since year 6 of our marriage. At 9:42 a.m., I got in my car and drove to the storage unit address she'd so kindly texted me the night before. I entered the code. The door groaned open. 2 boxes, one labeled clothes, the other misc. Inside, suits, gym clothes, my old laptop, and the leather-bound journal my father gave me the year I opened my firm. But nothing else. No wedding photos, no family books, no keepsakes, not even the watch my dad wore the day he passed it on to me. It wasn't about the objects, it was about the message. She hadn't just taken money. She had tried to delete my place in the narrative of our life. Like I had been an expense to be cleared. I sat in the car for 10 minutes after, not angry, just aware. Then I drove home, packed the rest of my things, and opened a blank document on my second machine. At the top, I typed, Phase 2, Contingency in Motion. Owen was already in my driveway when I got back, laptop open on his passenger seat, hoodie pulled over his head like he was hunting servers, not sipping coffee on a suburban cul-de-sac. I slid into the passenger seat and handed him a USB. Primary data pull, I said. All access attempts, financial shifts, joint account anomalies, and the packet for Natalie's co-signed loans. He didn't ask how I got it so fast. You want to go loud or quiet? He asked. Quiet, for now. We pulled out of the driveway without another word. When you've built contingency plans with someone for 5 years, you don't need to explain why it's time. You just know. We drove to his office, bare bones, rented under a holding LLC with no signage. Owen's specialty was digital security for financial institutions. He'd built firewalls for hedge funds, untraceable sandboxes for whistleblower teams, and once reverse engineered a ransomware payload just to prove a point. He wasn't the guy you called after the damage. He was the guy you kept on speed dial in case you sensed the damage might be coming. We called it Protocol Iron Line, originally designed for a client case that never materialized. But we'd adapted it. Over weekends, over bourbon, over long conversations that always began with one question. What if it was us? We ran it now. Phase 1, Confirm Brent Maddox's financial signature. We traced his LLC filings. His gym business, Maddox Performance Studio, had 3 open credit lines, 2 of which had ballooning interest rates, a high-interest lease on new equipment, promotional debt tied to influencer campaigns. Then the big one, a $175,000 0-cents commercial loan underwritten 4 months ago, collateralized by equipment and co-signed by Natalie. That's not even the dangerous part, Owen said, flipping to the second page of the contract. Loan language says, joint spousal assets used to secure the personal guarantee. I leaned forward. She used my name without my consent. Exactly. That makes it fraud. Exactly again. He clicked open another tab. Check this out. Commercial lease for the new studio, also in Natalie's name. 3 months down, 2 remaining. Brent's name isn't on it. So if we cut the guarantee lines, they're exposed from 4 sides. Good, I said. Now phase 2. We search for Natalie's digital footprint over the past 90 days. VPN bounced locations, IP ties to known burner accounts. 3 transfers had gone to Brent's gym under the guise of marketing partnerships. $12,000 0 cents each, but all from the same routing number, our joint account. The one I had frozen. That money was already gone. Can we trace what he used it for? I asked. Partial equipment payments, promo campaigns, and, oh look, Instagram ad buys, targeting Denver and Miami. I stared at the screen. He's trying to expand before the first studio is even solvent. It's a house of cards, Simon, popped up on your credit score and her fantasy of reinvention. I didn't speak for a while. Just scrolled through the paper trail. Every document, every contract, every lie she built with someone who thought 6-pack abs made up for a collapsing balance sheet. I wasn't angry. I was strategic. At 2:17 p.m., Owen leaned back. You want to move to phase 3? I nodded. Yeah, let's put the net under them. Before they even know they're falling. He opened a fresh document. We called it the Brent Collapse File. Inside, screenshots, documents, trace logs, credit applications, marital violation flags, legal citations, all formatted, time-stamped, admissible. No emotion, just facts. This is clean, Owen said, scrolling. No slander, no reach, just math and fraud. Good. I picked up my phone and texted my attorney. Phase 3 initiated, collateral breach confirmed, standby for asset freeze authorization. Her reply came within 3 minutes. Standing by, when do we push? I looked at Owen. We wait. They think they're flying right now. I smiled faintly. Now we watch them walk straight into it. It started at 6:08 a.m. The first call came just as I finished tying my shoes for a morning run, something I hadn't done in weeks. Natalie's name lit up the screen, bright and centered like she still had a place in my day. I let it ring. She called again at 6:10, then 6:13, then 6:17. I turned the phone face down and stepped outside. The sky was overcast, the pavement cold underfoot, but it felt honest, real. Like everything I hadn't said for 15 years was finally exhaling. When I got back an hour later, I had 7 missed calls, 2 voicemails, and 1 text. Simon, I don't know what's going on. The money's gone. The cards won't work. Call me now. I took a long shower instead, not out of cruelty, but because I'd already called who I needed to. My attorney, the bank, my brother. Natalie was no longer on that list. At 9:05, a new message came through. We need to talk. This isn't fair. Fair? I smiled, not bitterly, but with the kind of amusement that comes when someone who's been cheating suddenly demands rules. I brewed coffee, opened my laptop, and reviewed phase 3. The asset freeze was in progress. Brent's equipment loan had been flagged. The promotional accounts Natalie funneled money into were now tagged for forensic audit. Her name was no longer protected by mine. Every guarantee she'd made, signed in haste, dressed in yoga gear and delusion, was collapsing under its own weight. At 11:22, the calls intensified, 5 in a row. Then a voicemail, her voice sharp, then shaking. I don't know what you think you're doing, but this isn't just about you anymore. You're hurting other people. I closed the voicemail without listening to the rest. Hurting people? Natalie had transferred 6 figures behind my back, co-signed loans I'd never heard of, and tried to erase me from my own narrative. And now I was the one hurting people. At noon, she escalated. A call to my office line. Valerie, my assistant, buzzed in. Simon, your wife's trying to reach you. Again. I walked out of my office and into reception. Natalie was already there, standing beneath the company logo, sunglasses perched on her head like she hadn't just burned a life to the ground. There's been a huge mistake, she said as soon as she saw me, voice raised just enough to gather attention. All our accounts are frozen. The bank says there's a fraud flag. I met her eyes. Because there was fraud. It was a joint account, she hissed under her breath. I'm your wife. You were, I replied quietly. And you emptied our savings while you were on vacation with another man. That's financial misconduct, Natalie. Her face flushed. I needed that money to move forward. And you did, I said. You just forgot to leave the marriage before spending it. Her voice cracked. You can't do this. I've already made commitments. Brent has clients, plans. This will ruin everything. I stepped closer, voice low and even. I know. That's not my doing. That's yours. But I understand it's easier to blame me than admit you handed your future to someone drowning in debt and charisma. She stared at me, jaw clenched. I'll fight this. You're welcome too, I said, but you're fighting with paper. I built the system you're trying to beat, and I designed it to be unbreakable, from the inside. Her lips parted like she wanted to say more, but nothing came. I turned and walked back toward my office. Behind me, her phone buzzed again. Maybe Brent this time, maybe another promise cracking. I didn't look back. I didn't need to, because that buzzing sound, the one that kept coming again and again, it wasn't a call for help anymore. It was the echo of a plan falling apart, rung by rung, exactly as calculated. The gym was as artificial as its founder. Neon signage out front, inspirational quotes in clean sans serif type across the walls, push past limits, discipline is freedom. I parked across the street and watched for a few minutes. Inside, young professionals posed for selfies in matching athleisure, lifting weights more for aesthetics than effort. Brent Maddox's face was on a banner over the check-in desk. Smiling, shirtless, arms folded, like a parody of himself. I walked in with a manila folder in my hand and asked for him by name. Mr. Maddox is training a client, the receptionist said. He'll be done in 20 minutes. I nodded and sat on the waiting bench. I didn't pace. I didn't scroll my phone. We just waited. 18 minutes later, he emerged from a glass-walled training room, wiping sweat from his forehead with a towel too white for someone who owed that much money. He spotted me and walked over, mask of charm already forming. You must be Simon, he said, offering a handshake like we were meeting at a barbecue. I didn't take it. We need to talk, privately. His smile stiffened, but he led me to a small office in the back. Glass walls, faux wood desk, diffuser in the corner pumping out lavender like it could cover structural debt. He closed the door. What can I do for you? I sat down across from him, laid the folder on the desk, and slid it forward. This is every financial document linking you to my wife. Loans, leases, credit cards, co-signed applications. Read it. He hesitated, then opened it. Page by page, the tan in his face seemed to drain. These are legitimate business arrangements, he said after a moment. They're between Dana and me. Perhaps, I replied, but the banks approved those loans based on our marital assets. You didn't just borrow her money. You borrowed my name. He said you knew. She was wrong. He swallowed. Look, man, I didn't mean to step on your toes. Dana said things were already over between you two. They weren't, not legally, and certainly not financially. So what do you want, money? An apology? I leaned forward slightly, voice calm. I don't want anything from you, Brent. This isn't extortion. This isn't personal. This is notification. He blinked. Of what? That those loans are no longer secured by marital backing, that the fraud reports have been filed, that the banks will be calling your guarantees due within the next business cycle. His mouth opened, closed. You're serious. Deadly. But if she divorces you, doesn't that mean the protections fall away? Exactly. Which means everything you built on those lies collapses. He looked down at the folder again, flipping through like he was searching for a typo that would save him. You planned this? He said quietly. No, I said. You planned this. You and Dana. I just documented it. He looked up, desperate now. You have to understand. She said you were boring, that you didn't care, that you'd moved on emotionally. This isn't about emotions. I stood. This isn't about love or loss or betrayal. This is about paperwork. about what happens when two people commit fraud and forget one of them used to teach forensic finance. He didn't speak, just stared at the folder like it might ignite. At the door, I turned back. One more thing. When Dana moved out, she took items that belonged to me. Personal, irreplaceable things. A watch. Some family photos. If you find them, I'd like them returned. I'll see what I can do, he mumbled. I nodded once. This wasn't revenge, Brent. It's just accounting. Then I walked out, past the smoothies, past the abs, past the illusion, letting him sit there, alone, with the numbers. 3 days later, my attorney called and said they want to negotiate. I didn't ask who they was. It didn't matter. Anyone sitting on a house of lies eventually comes to the table, thinking they still have something to offer. I arrived at the mediation office wearing a gray suit, clean-shaven, no emotion on my face. Just a black leather folder under one arm. Dana was already there with her attorney. She wore a cream blazer, subtle makeup, and the look of someone trying to appear composed under pressure. Her lawyer, mid-40s, aggressive tie, tired eyes, stood as we entered. We exchanged nods. Formalities matter when consequences are in the air. My client, the lawyer began, is willing to be reasonable about the division of assets, despite the aggressive tactics that have been taken thus far. My attorney didn't smile. She simply reached into her bag and pulled out a single document. Before we proceed, you should see this. She slid it across the table. Dana's lawyer frowned, unfolding it. He read quickly, slower, then stopped. His eyes darted to Dana, then back to us. What is this, he asked. A completed fraud investigation, my attorney said, from the bank that underwrote the $175,000 0-cents equipment loan your client co-signed, using her marital status and my client's assets as leverage without his knowledge. You're saying she forged the signature? Yes. And we have handwriting verification, digital metadata, and the transaction timeline to prove it. Dana went pale. Her lips moved, but no words came out. Her attorney cleared his throat. We'll need time to review. Of course, my attorney said, but you should know the bank has already forwarded this to the district attorney. This meeting is a courtesy before criminal charges are filed. Dana finally spoke. Criminal charges, Simon? I looked at her, not angry, not cold, just done. I didn't file them, I said. The bank did. She leaned in, voice low, trying to bypass the lawyers. You don't have to go through with this. We can settle. You can stop this now. You're still acting like you control the narrative. Simon, please. You drained our account, co-signed loans behind my back, used our marriage to guarantee someone else's business. I leaned forward. You committed fraud, and the only reason you're sitting here and not in custody is because I'm still willing to settle civilly. Her lawyer whispered something in her ear. She shook her head hard, like denial could change paper. My attorney slid another document across the table. Here's our offer. You keep the yoga studio, you keep the car, you keep your personal belongings. You receive no alimony. And you assume full responsibility for any debt tied to Mr. Maddox. That's outrageous, Dana's lawyer said. That's generous, mine replied. If Miss Calder signs today, Mr. Calder is prepared to issue a formal statement to the bank confirming no intent to pursue restitution or press for charges on property theft. Dana's hands trembled. She looked at me, eyes searching. And Brent? She asked, voice barely audible. My attorney answered for me. Mr. Maddox's finances are not our concern, but the bank has already begun collection proceedings. We suggest you warn him. Dana stared at the paper like it was burning her fingers. Then she signed. No rebuttal, no speech, just ink and silence. As we gathered our things, she reached out. I never thought you'd fight back like this, she said. You always just went along with everything. I met her gaze. That was my choice, I said, just like this was yours. Then I left the room. No satisfaction, no victory lap. Just the quiet clarity of someone who didn't need to win. He just needed to stop playing the wrong game. Dana didn't speak to me again after the settlement. Not through her lawyer, not through mutual friends, not even through a late-night last-ditch text. I thought that might surprise me. It didn't. She'd always underestimated the weight of silence. Thought noise was power, volume, drama, presence. But silence, when held long enough, reshapes the room. 2 days after mediation, I received a call from the bank's internal recovery team. Not about Dana. About Brent. The loan guarantees had officially unraveled. With no marital asset backing, the gym's debt profile shifted from high risk to imminent default. Brent's equipment was being repossessed. The promotional lease defaulted. The expansion campaign halted mid-rollout. His social media changed overnight. From wellness guru to survivalist. From mountain quotes to vague threats. I didn't comment. I didn't even watch. Valerie, my assistant, kept me updated. Your ex-wife called again, she said one morning. 3 times. Sounded not angry, just lost. I nodded. Didn't pick up? Didn't need to, she said. I figured if you wanted to hear her voice, you'd have done it weeks ago. That afternoon, a courier dropped a box at my new office. No note, just a leather-bound photo album, my father's watch, and a pair of cufflinks from our wedding. I didn't open the album. Not out of spite, but because memory, like debt, carries interest when handled too late. Dana had given them back, not as apology, but as proof that she no longer had anything left to hold leverage over. A week later, I heard through a friend that she'd moved to Colorado. Starting fresh, the Instagram post said. Overlaid on a filtered sunrise, the caption read, "Sometimes letting go means you're finally free." I closed the app, not in disgust, in peace. Letting go wasn't the hard part. It was holding on for too long. Trey Maddox, meanwhile, vanished. Last I checked, he'd removed his name from the gym's registry, sold the remaining gear to a liquidation firm, and deleted most of his online presence. No apology, no acknowledgement, just silence. Almost like he'd studied it. One afternoon, my attorney forwarded me an inquiry from Dana's lawyer. Not a demand, just a question. Would Mr. Calder be willing to provide a written statement that might prevent the fraud case from escalating? I didn't respond. Not because I wanted her punished, but because some truths aren't undone with ink. Some debts aren't paid with favors. A few days later, my phone rang again, her number. I answered, not because I missed her, but because she needed to hear what silence sounds like when it speaks. Simon, she said, I wanted to say something. I waited. I know you don't owe me anything. I know I made mistakes. I just didn't think you'd ever walk away like this, without a fight. I breathed once, steady. You destroyed this quietly, I said. I'm just letting the silence finish what you started. She didn't reply, and I didn't fill the space for her. I hung up. Not to end the conversation, but to leave it exactly where it belonged, unfinished, unfixable, and unforgotten. A week after the last call, I packed the truck and headed north. No destination typed into GPS, just a memory pulling me by the collar. My father used to take me to the cabin near Mille Lacs Lake when I was a boy. Said the water up there washes different. Back then, it was all fishing rods, peanut butter sandwiches, and the crackle of old vinyl seats in a pickup older than I was. Now, it was mine, quietly deeded to me after he passed, untouched for years. I'd kept paying the taxes, mowing the lot when I had time, but never truly returned. Until now. The road curved into pine and ash, and for the first time in months, my shoulders lowered from around my ears. I pulled up the gravel driveway just before sunset. The place looked smaller than I remembered, but stronger. As if time hadn't eroded it, just distilled it. I stepped inside. Dust, sure, but everything still worked. No drama, no explanations, just structure. At 7:43 p.m., I made coffee on the old stove, even though I didn't need the caffeine. Sat on the porch in the worn-out chair my dad used to favor and listened to the night come on like a wave. No vibrations, no buzzing phones, no missed calls blinking in the dark. Just owls, wind, and the soft creak of wood that had held its shape longer than any promise I'd ever signed. I didn't come here to heal. That implies something broke inside me. I came to remember who I was before life got edited by convenience. The next morning, I found the toolbox in the shed, started working on the back steps. One board at a time, sanded, measured, nailed. There's a rhythm to carpentry that doesn't care who left you, what they stole, or how many people called you a boring accountant. The wood only asks, are you steady? Are you exact? I was. I stayed for 2 weeks, fixed the door hinges, rewired the porch light, took the boat out twice. No fishing rod, just drift, just sky. On the 7th day, Owen drove up. No warning, just appeared with beer and silence. We sat on the porch for an hour before either of us spoke. I checked Maddox's gym filings, he said eventually. He's been hit with 3 lawsuits, creditors, 1 former employee. Guy's finished. I nodded. Dana? Moved out of her Colorado lease. Word is she's couch hopping through some retreat circuit. And? She tried to apply for a new LLC loan, denied across the board. Her name's on too many default flags now. I took a sip of coffee. Let her be. I'm done tracking people who never bothered to read the fine print. Owen smiled. You look better. I feel unlisted, I said. That night, I opened my father's old ledger. He used to jot down quotes, fishing stats, sometimes nothing but weather notes. On the first blank page, I wrote 1 sentence. This time, I'm building something no one can co-sign on. It came on a Tuesday, late afternoon, the kind of golden silence that hangs after you've finally remembered how to breathe again. My phone rang. No name, just a Chicago area code I hadn't seen in years. I almost let it go. Almost. But something made me swipe. Simon Calder, I said. A beat. Then a familiar voice. You really did disappear, said Clara Vance, former director of compliance at a firm I used to consult for. Clara, I said, standing. It's been years. 7, to be exact. Since that case in Baton Rouge. You left a spreadsheet in my inbox that practically rewrote our audit protocols. I smiled. Glad it helped. Simon, she continued, her tone shifting. I'm not calling to reminisce. I've been watching the Maddox case. You didn't leave fingerprints, but you left a trail of logic only a forensic mind would thread so cleanly. The entire board is whispering. I sat back down. I didn't do it for attention. You didn't need to. But the precision, the restraint, that's what caught our eye. We're launching a new training initiative, targeting young auditors, compliance officers, systems engineers, the kind who are brilliant but still green. They don't know how to see what's not there. I said nothing. We want you to design the framework. You don't have to leave the woods. You don't have to report to anyone. Just build it, your way, quietly, if that's how you prefer. Outside, the trees shifted like they knew this was coming. Clara, I didn't burn out. I just realized I was building for people who didn't care if the structure held. Then build for the ones who will, she said. We'll fund it. Full autonomy, no press, just systems that last. That's what you do, right? I looked at the ledger on my desk, the one I'd written in 3 nights ago. This time, I'm building something no one can co-sign on. Tell the board I'm not coming back, I said. But I am building something. And if they're smart, they'll watch carefully. She laughed softly. You haven't changed. No, I said. Just quieter, and finally useful on my own terms. We hung up without a goodbye. Some calls don't need punctuation, just direction. I turned off the ringer, went back to the porch, and watched the wind move through the trees like it had somewhere to be. Maybe I did too. The program started with no press release, no ribbon cutting, just a PDF quietly uploaded to a private server, shared with exactly 9 people, compliance officers, internal auditors, and engineers who had each once reached out to me with quiet desperation after being told, that's not how we do things here. I called it the Quiet Systems Initiative. Owen handled infrastructure. Clara brought in funding through a shell nonprofit. I built curriculum, case studies that didn't name names, but mirrored the exact schemes I'd spent a lifetime unraveling. I gave them simulations, financial puzzles wrapped in real-world language. No flashy jargon, just paper trails, inconsistencies, and decisions that tested not knowledge, but integrity. By week 3, we had 42 participants, then 87, then over 200. I never advertised, I never answered interviews, but they came, one by one, young analysts who didn't want to be promoted for who they knew, but for what they could see before others did. We hosted virtual sessions, one-on-one workshops. I assigned exercises like trace the failure before it reaches the boardroom and design a system no one wants credit for because it never breaks. They leaned in hard, and I saw myself in them. Not the younger version, the smarter version. The version that would never be talked over in meetings, never be told to stay in your lane, because now they knew what their lane was made of. I'd built all this from a repurposed workbench at the cabin. Still dusty, still half-stained with the paint my father used to mark measurements. Each night, I'd log the day's outcomes in a new ledger. Black cover, cream pages, nothing digital. I wrote every entry by hand. One night, after a particularly good session, I pulled down my father's old book from the top shelf. The one with weather notes and fishing tallies and a quote he once scrawled after a long day failing to catch anything. Some days, catching nothing teaches you more than hauling it in too fast. I opened my own ledger beside his, same format, different weight, and I wrote, "No one will quote this ledger, but it will outlive the lies that tried to erase me." I closed the book, no applause, no bonus, just the wind through the trees and the quiet click of a system that was finally working the way it should. I came back to the city 1 year to the day after the settlement was signed. Not for court, not for closure, just curiosity. I'd received a formal invitation weeks earlier, an internal compliance symposium hosted by the same financial firm that once told me, "You're overcomplicating things." They'd titled the event, "Resilience by Design, Preventing Financial Exposure Before It Starts." Irony wears a tie now. I didn't RSVP. I just showed up. Quiet suit, black notebook, no badge, no name tag. I slipped into the back row of the conference room like a ghost in a system that once tried to delete me. On stage, a younger man was explaining layered approval architecture. "The key," he said, "is to design with failure in mind. Assume human error. Build in audit triggers, cross-verifiable checkpoints." He spoke like he'd invented the method, but I knew every line, every structure, every principle, because I'd written them 12 years ago in a draft no one bothered to read, until the day it saved them. Now they were repackaging my work as industry best practice. And no one clapped louder than the executives who once called me too cautious. I didn't feel bitter. I felt amused. It's always the same. They cut you to move faster. Then when the crash comes, they reverse engineer your ghost. During the Q&A, I stayed silent. I didn't come for recognition. I came to see if the ideas survived, even if the author had been erased. They had. In the hallway afterward, a young analyst approached me, fresh-pressed shirt, sharp eyes. "Excuse me," he said, lowering his voice. "Are you Simon Calder?" I tilted my head. "Depends who's asking." "I've read your training modules, quiet systems. I'm in cohort 7. I nodded, good cohort. He leaned in. "That system they teach here now? I heard you wrote it. Years ago, before they knew it was valuable." I smiled. "Then they're finally teaching it right." He hesitated, then added, "I'm glad you didn't disappear." "I did," I said, "but I left instructions." We shook hands. No photos, no speech, just a quiet acknowledgement between people who understand the difference between being seen and being understood. I walked out of the building into the afternoon sun. Same skyline, same sidewalks, but this time I wasn't part of the blueprint, and that, I realized, was the freedom. They could replace my badge, erase my seat, cut my budget, but they couldn't subtract me from the systems that held the roof up. I'd made sure of that. The cabin hadn't changed. That's what made it enough. While the cities reinvented themselves quarterly and people updated truths like software patches, this place stayed still, just enough for me to hear myself again. I returned in early fall. Leaves halfway turned, wind cooler but not sharp, the kind of quiet that doesn't ask for anything. I unpacked light, laptop, one jacket, and the black ledger, now soft at the corners, weighty from its own content. I sat at the same table, same window, same hour as the first night I arrived a year ago. The pine trees still swayed, like they weren't keeping score. I flipped through the ledger, every page a thread. Cases I helped rebuild from behind the curtain. Students who didn't need applause to do right. Systems fixed before the public ever knew they were broken. Not a name in sight, just initials, lessons, questions that taught better than answers ever could. I thought about how this all began, not with betrayal, but with disbelief. Not just in Natalie, but in a world that sold speed over structure, charm over checks and balances, short-term growth over long-term integrity. I wasn't trying to fight it anymore. I was just planting the kind of thinking that resists erosion, one line at a time. I turned to the last blank page, let my pen rest there a moment. Then I wrote, "No one will ever quote this, but the people who need it, they'll know it was here." I closed the book, not with finality, with enough. I stood up, poured myself a black coffee and stepped outside. No music, no alerts, just the crackle of branches and the slow exhale of October. I wasn't angry anymore, wasn't chasing justice. I wasn't even trying to be understood. I'd done something rarer. I had stayed looky halo, whole, when so many systems collapse, not from failure, but from being ignored. I didn't ignore myself. That night, before sleep, I opened the ledger one last time and added a footnote at the bottom of the final entry. Small, centered, no emphasis, just truth. I was never trying to win, just trying to last. Not every battle needs noise. Some people, like Simon, walk away not to retaliate, but to rebuild, quietly, precisely, and with a steadiness that doesn't ask for applause. We live in a world that celebrates volume and speed, yet forgets that the most resilient systems are often designed by those no one sees. Simon didn't seek victory, he chose integrity, something strong enough to stand without a spotlight. This story wasn't about revenge. It was about a truth. You can be replaced, dismissed, overlooked, but if what you built was solid, they can't subtract you from its foundation. They might forget your name, but the system will remember, because it still works. And sometimes, that's the purest form of justice, knowing your silence held, even when their noise didn't. Because silence, when rooted in clarity, echoes longer than any voice raised in anger. If Simon's story made you pause, made you reflect on the value of integrity, quiet strength, and the long game, leave a comment. You don't need to explain. Just type, "I choose to endure." And if you've ever been underestimated, replaced, or quietly erased from something you helped build, remember this: not all value is loud. Some value is proven simply by lasting longer than the noise that tried to bury it. Thank you for spending time with this story. We'll see you again, where things are quieter, stronger, and built to last.